A new survey by the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce shows only 46% of storefront businesses in the city that were open at the beginning of the pandemic are still operating. That's 1,200 storefronts still in business, 1,300 closed.
San Francisco is in the midst of a collapse, and it is experiencing a mass exodus, one that my family and I are part of. And yes, more than half of San Francisco's storefronts closed due to the coup, including my wife's very successful hair salon. This is her story. This is our story. Yes, I'm finally making my Escape from San Francisco video, which will lead to my Cal exit. Up front, I would like to thank my subscribers for their patience. I normally do not cover content like this. The pop culture commentary will return in the next video.
Nerderotic.com.
Recently, I made a video covering the adult pretenders, who you might know as celebrities, fleeing Hollywood in droves due to the draconian coup restrictions put on them by the municipal mismanagers that they all supported and put into office. Those same municipal mismanagers and adult pretenders who were calling to defund the police, leading to a loss of confidence in that organization, and that organization losing confidence, leading directly to a crime wave and allowing rioting and looting to happen with impunity because that organization doesn't think the municipal mismanagers have their back, which they don't. It's no different for any of the remaining cities here in California. San Francisco, more than half of all storefronts in San Francisco are no longer in business due to the coup and the rioting and the looting, according to a survey by San Francisco Chamber of Commerce. I will add things that they won't. Obviously, the mainstream media will not bring up the obvious reasons that there is a mass exodus from San Francisco, including San Francisco having some of the lowest numbers for the coup in the state, yet some of the worst restrictions. And of course, all that peaceful protesting. I don't want to live in a city where rioting and looting is allowed. I know that sounds crazy and I'm the bad guy here, but I don't want to live in a place where it's against the law for my wife to go and run her business, but it's perfectly okay if somebody wakes up in the morning and burns down my wife's business. The survey showed only 46% of storefront business in San Francisco that were open at the beginning of the pandemic are still operating, said Jay Chang, spokesman of the San Francisco City of Commerce. Again, with some of the lowest numbers for the coup in the state. That means 1,200 stores are still open while about 1,300 have closed permanently, Chang said. And one of those businesses was Secret Agent Salon, my wife's hair salon on California Street near Pacific Heights. It was successful almost from the get-go. She made it through the Great Recession, and it was rocking up until March 16th when we were all experiencing the greatest economy I have ever seen in my lifetime. How successful was my wife? She was booked out for months, for years, had and still has an A-list clientele, was written up in all the fashion magazines you can possibly think of, including Vogue, and she had to watch her dream die. Why? Because of politics. And if you don't think it was because of politics, I have some land in San Francisco I'd like to sell you. The Chamber of Commerce is now concentrating on an unusual effort, helping businesses close smoothly. California was going to open the salons back up in late June, and a lot did, except in San Francisco. It was delayed till mid-July in the city, and then it was delayed indefinitely. Why? Supposedly, the coup numbers went back up. Why did they go back up? Maybe because they were testing more people and they moved the goalposts again, or maybe, just maybe, it was the rioting and the looting. Not really sure. I don't know what to believe anymore, but that was the final nail in the coffin for my wife's business, and I'm guessing a lot more. Thousands more. 54% of San Francisco's small businesses, to be exact. I really can't vote, but when I do, it's a fart in the wind. I don't vote like a San Franciscan, but I now have to suffer the consequences of the local politicians' policies that have obviously been a failure, and their constituents are recognizing that too and getting the hell out of Dodge. The 2020 San Francisco exodus is real and historic, report shows. A new report confirms what many have been talking about for weeks. There is an exodus out of San Francisco, and the numbers are staggering. Online real estate company Zillow released new statistics shining a stark light on the issue this week. Their 2020 Urban Suburban Market Report reveals that inventory has risen a whopping 96% year on year as empty homes in the city flood the market like nowhere else in America. And that's where things get a little more challenging for my family, because we are homeowners in San Francisco and we do need to sell that house. Now, fortunately, my wife and I worked our asses off to put ourselves in a position where we could get the hell out of Dodge while we look for a new place to live. I know not everyone can do that. My heart goes out to you. But the politicians, certain politicians from the Democratic side of the aisle, and the elite adult pretenders down in Hollywood and the technocratic overlords in Silicon Valley continue to root on the rioting and the looting to this very day, including the particularly empty-headed adult pretender Elizabeth Banks, who disingenuously tweeted about the incident in Kenosha, Wisconsin, omitting some facts about that incident, validating the individuals burning down these businesses. And I am recording this video on a day where businesses are currently burning and have been burnt down in the last 24 to 48 hours in Wisconsin. This brings us to a Twitter thread, and now I can mix in a little bit of the pop culture. Thanks to Ichibaka from Disney Star Wars is Dumb for bringing this to my attention, or I would have never seen it. Apparently, I was mentioned in a Twitter spat between Laura Ingraham and Hal Hickel from Industrial Light and Magic. Yes, that is the same Hal Hickel who said Star Wars isn't about wars. Now, Laura Ingraham decided to respond to Nancy Pelosi calling the right or Laura Ingraham dangerous, I'm not sure. Recently, conservative pundit Laura Ingraham had some comments about San Francisco, and this Twitter thread really sums up all of the problems with San Francisco, whether people want to admit it or not. Unhinged Nancy, her hometown is a nightmare of feces and needles on the streets, homelessness and crime, and she's calling us dangerous? Nice try, Grandma Mimi. Hal Hickel decides to respond. Wow, Laura, name-calling, ageism, and lying. Your tweet is as ugly and uncivil as it is untruthful. Not surprised at all, though. I've come to expect nothing better from you and your toxic employer. Well, Hal, you would know a thing or two about a toxic employer. You work for Disney. Now, I don't know much about Laura, but as far as her tweet being untruthful, I'm going to have to disagree with you there, but let's fact check it together. Her hometown is a nightmare of poo.
Yeah, Brian, it is a problem that really smells, and Mayor London Breed is throwing a lot of money at it to make it better. The city will soon have a so-called poop patrol out on the streets.
And needles.
Ken, this complaint was printed at the bottom of a restaurant menu. It criticizes the straw ban and then takes a swipe at the city for handing out hypodermic needles.
Mayor Breed says she sees where they're coming from, but stands by banning straws.
Homelessness.
It's the most explosive tent city I have ever seen.
If you haven't said it yourself, you've probably heard it said. Homelessness in San Francisco has reached a breaking point.
And crime.
Now, Mr. Sellers told us, as a building manager, he negotiated the lease for CVS Pharmacy to come to this neighborhood. He was hoping that it would actually improve the scene here. He said, but instead, it's become the most shoplifted CVS in America.
As uncivil as it may be, it was still truthful. Major American cities are a mess and are in collapse. Hal responds, I lived in the Bay Area for 25 years. Major cities face big problems, and San Francisco is no exception, but it's not the fever dream that Ingraham describes. No, it's pretty close to spot on the way Ingraham describes it. I don't agree with her on everything, but this I do. You'd think she lived in a sheltered life in a tiny town the way she talks. Thing is, even she knows it's BS. No, it's actually HS. It's human S. And how you are the elitist who lives the sheltered, privileged life, going to ILM up in Marin County. And by the way, you said you lived in the Bay Area. When somebody says that, that means I don't live in San Francisco. Well, one of my tweets got brought up, and Chappie puts, that's my finger right there, puts up my fleeing San Francisco video, or my San Francisco Exodus video, which was 10 seconds long, and I'm cussing at the city. Actual video of someone leaving San Francisco. Hal says, which means nothing to me. People leave cities all over the country and arrive in cities over the country daily. Well, not like this.
6:30, you can't throw a rock in San Francisco without hitting a moving truck, and most of them are headed out.
According to Zillow, inventory in the city, there in orange, has soared by 96% year over year. We saw plenty of people loading up moving vans this morning.
I think this is something you could feel happening in San Francisco for a little while. Well, now it is hard to turn a corner and not see it right in front of you.
Want to kind of take it easy on Hal from ILM? He makes pixels for a living, and he might not be aware that just because he works for ILM, it doesn't make him an expert on policy, social policy, or political policy. It makes him an expert on dots. And the same goes for the adult pretenders. They're very good at pretending and not much else. Yet they are fanning the flames of division, trying to tear down a system that they benefit the most from. They really are that dumb. I couldn't be more proud of my wife right now. She could be playing the victim or feeling sorry for herself, but she isn't. She has turned the page. She's on to the next adventure. She knows this is only temporary, yet she's still pissed, and she has every right to be. She did everything you're supposed to do. She followed all the rules. She paid her taxes on time. She treated her employees with respect. She had a passion for her job, and it's all gone. Why? Because of politicians playing games and San Francisco being shut down since March 16th with, for the third time, some of the lowest numbers in the state. Now, I know our story is not the worst, and you haven't heard from business owners. You want to know why? Because it would break the narrative. It would show that there's actual consequences for the rioting and the looting and the political games.
The chamber is now concentrating on an unusual effort, helping businesses close.
Don't feel bad for us. We will be okay. Feel bad for the business owner who had to watch his or her life's dream go up in smoke, literally in a town or a city where their politicians aren't even going to call that out. San Francisco thinks it's the most modern, progressive city in the world, and they were ahead of the curve when it comes to defund the police. Around the 9th time my car was broken into, I had to file a police report online. Who can forget the memeology video with that Walgreens being cleaned out because California decriminalized shoplifting? Yes, you can steal $950 worth of stuff without the fear of being arrested in California and in San Francisco. That Walgreens was 2 blocks away from the comic shop I ran for 10 years. In that shop, I talked to a lot of San Franciscans, and I found that a surprising number of them had some sort of story of being either attacked, mugged, robbed, burglarized in their apartment or their home, and having their car burglarized multiple times. Yours truly, again, is no exception. Somebody tried to mug my 6'5" son. That wasn't a good idea. Someone attempted to rob me at knife point, and I ended up with a new knife. So we have made our escape from San Francisco, but not in the nick of time. Unfortunately, we still have a home there that we need to sell. Unfortunately, my wife lost her business, but we are doing okay. We are temporarily in San Diego, North County, because it's one of the last sane areas in this state. And Mrs. Nerdrotic, who wants to get back to work, can work, and she won't be prosecuted for it. We can also use this as a base of operations while we look for another state to live.
What's the story? You moving?
I'm out of here. Yeah.
When do you leave?
Soon. Yeah.
Texas or?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Texas. I just want to go somewhere in the center of the country, somewhere it's easier to travel to both places, and somewhere where you have a little bit more freedom.
And that's what my family wants too. So as Joe Rogan and the Hollywood celebrities flee California, along with yours truly and my family, we promise not to bring California with us. You have our solemn oath. We will not vote like Californians, whatever red state we end up in. London Breed and San Francisco, be careful what you wish for. You want to defund the police? Sure, but we're not going to stop there. Let's defund the meter maids, the street cleaners, the trash collectors, the local tax collectors, the teachers, the bus drivers, the teachers' unions, the bus drivers' unions, all the unions related to city workers, and you, London Breed. I'm guessing the Democratic leadership in America's big cities are starting to realize that people actually want police around, and they're not really fond of rioting and looting, and they're going to have to come up with a sales pitch to get people back to their cities. I can hear San Francisco's right now. Welcome to London Breed's San Francisco, a democratically run dystopian paradise. Come and take a poop on the street. Come to a local Hilton and cook up some crab prank, but don't you think about vaping. Go to a local Walgreens and steal just under $950 worth of merchandise without the fear of being arrested. Enjoy the cheaper real estate. Buy a home, rent an apartment that you won't be allowed to leave. But don't you think about getting a haircut. While we'll defund the police, the ones that are left will come and arrest you for it. Okay, I've had my say. Cal Exit Phase 1 has begun. And when we do eventually decide on a state to live in, we will not bring California with us. And one more thing, once we get there, we're not leaving. We're not giving up any more ground. Not another inch.
Nerderotic.com. Please subscribe.
Here's to the Army and Navy and the battles they have won. Here's to America's colors, the colors that never run.
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.